Up here off of Mustang, Live Oak, all this area here, False Live Oak Point, just across from Mustang Lake. We've been working these edges out here, all the rocks and everything, both on the inside and the outside. We've been on the outside just a little bit. That's pretty much a little bit deeper than maybe that you want to wade, so you probably want to get on your trolling motor or something like that to work the outer edges of the rock barrier that's here around False Live Oak. And then you can get up on the inside where all the rocks and stuff are and work that from the shoreline out. All that area up in there is starting to show, some fish are starting to show up, primarily trout in this area. So we're getting all different size, the 12s to 16 to 17, somewhere along in there. Just kind of work all these areas up and down those rock areas, looking for your bait, looking for your tidal movement, what's going on, either wind-driven or tidal-driven, whichever you like. Personally, me, I like the wind-driven movement. It helps better with the artificial side of stuff. All this area around here. Get on the back side here. Now, when you get on the back side of False Live Oak, as you head back toward, Rattlesnake and that area, toward Ayers Bay and that system, this back side gets a little bit more soft than what you do up in and around the rock area. So when you walk this area or work all that, just be aware of that. It's good and it's pretty good and solid for the most part, but there are some squishy areas just to be aware of. Like I said, we've found trout that are up in here. We found redfish up here, an occasional flounder laid up in here. Main things that we've been primarily throwing have been burner shad, in the acid rain, in the white ice. Purple rain has been very good for us. Supernatural has been good for us in those a little bit more translucent. Now, this being more open to that southeast breeze, this area here gets kind of beat up from time to time, so you want to kind of make sure that you got a little bit darker bait like the chicken of the sea, and either the burner or the original. Both sizes have been very good for us, been very productive. The knock and tail has been very good for us. And, of course, the Rogue has been very good for us for a while since it's come out. It's been very, very productive color for us. Also in the heavy metal and the greenback, those three flavors right there are pretty much solid. They've got the glass minnow that's out that's in a 3-inch, 3 1/4 inch. It's been very good as well. Mimics a little finger mullet, so you're starting to get some of that size bait that's in here in the system like that. But again, throwing those things, primarily, majors and minors have been the primary things that we're focusing everything on. We're just now finishing up. We're on the backside of a new moon, and we'll start to get into those transition days back to a full moon. So those are always things to make sure that you take in consideration when you're fishing particular areas, no matter where you're at, if you're up here north or if you're south. It doesn't matter. That's all a primary thing to make sure when you're throwing artificials that you're incorporating that into your fishing day. Again, those have been the most productive time frames for us. We've had just finished up this past weekend, lots of rain that came in for us. It's going to help all estuaries down the road. That's a really big deal for us. We need that kind of rainfall in here to really keep things as far as the salinity levels being right and keep things right for us. So again, it's a helpful thing for it. Maybe keep you off the water for a day or two, but again, we need it. Make sure that you're paying attention to those weather patterns because they're kind of getting a little bit of everywhere right now. Water levels are up, water temps are up, fish are showing up. So it's a lot of great things ahead for us as we head further into the springtime as we get closer to summertime. Back up here in Allen's Bight, all the inside shoreline. Of course, the outside as well. If you got really good back lakes that are here off the mouth of Allen's as you work back up in here, back toward that floater that's back in the back of there. You come all the way back in the back of Allen's, you've got back lake mouths that dump out to that. You can wade up into those mouths there. It gets a little squishy in some of those areas. If you have not waded that's a really good area to get. There's been some redfish that have been in there. There's been a tremendous amount. The numbers are not great, but they're, you can locate some in there. The top water action back in there it's been average. But you'll get some opportunity, especially if you like to stick with top water, if that's your thing. That's one of my favorite things to throw, especially getting those back lakes. But you'll get some opportunities that come along. Continue to work the back shoreline here off to the point there in Allen's Bight. You got the shell, that's a big old shell pad that's right there off that point that kind of tapers around. There's been some fish that's been caught off of that edge, whether it be redfish, be trout, an occasional black drum. We've pulled one of those out of there unexpectedly, but again, I've said in the past, you can catch them on artificials. It's possible. Little John's been the most productive for that. It's something that you really want to do. But yeah, that's what we've caught them on primarily. Coming on back down as you get to these lakes here, as you get down into the mouth, you got some opportunity on the shoreline there. on the opposite side, on the Allen's the bite area, that whole point that comes out from the shoreline all the way back out here. Biggest thing there that you have to really be aware of is when those tides that we have had in the last few days, it's been kind of scattered. One day you got a super high tide, then it'll kind of drop out depending on what the moon's doing. You have big moving tides and stuff that we've had either early mornings or late evenings, either or, especially around that new moon phase. We've had some big moving tides with that, but we've also had some really big bull tides. So that fishing area out here, it kind of changes for you a little bit. There's some tremendous grass that's coming in. It's going to be really good. Springtime's looking great and shaping up to be spectacular for us. Get on the shoreline here, work toward the ranch house. All this shoreline all the way out to this point. You've got different opportunities there. You got an edge that's here on that shoreline that comes all the way out to that point. All the way back around out to the little jetty wall that they have out to the ranch house that comes in there to where have the work boats that come in and out of that. So all these areas here have all been pretty good. They're not consistently holding fish, but there are some fish that are in there. Main things that you're looking for right now is you're looking for active bait working the area that you are. And it's been kind of up and down in particular areas. The few times that I've been up in this area here, we have found good solid bait working in there. Therefore, be patient with it. It hadn't been a super fast bite. The new moon phase for us this particular time frame wasn't quite as productive as it's been in the last couple of months. So that just kind of comes, it happens from time to time. It is what it is. So there's where the patient side of throwing artificials, you really have to make sure that you're working your structure. You make sure that you're locating your bait and finding it, and just entrust the fact that the process will happen. You may have to change bait a couple of times, seeing what your water clarity is and seeing kind of what the size of the bait is. When your major and minor is going to be kicking in for you, and kind of locate and see what happens as far as if your bite's taking place on the front half of it, if it's happened before the bite happens, if it's moving into it, so on, on the back half, whatever. Some of those little things that you really need to pay attention to, especially going into the springtime and the summertime, because it'll allow you to let you know. Because again, the fish, if you pay attention to what they're doing and what they're telling you, they'll let you know when and where when that bite's going to happen. Again, the burner shads in the original size in the down south, the 4-inch for the knock and tail. Again, the topwater action has been pretty average in some areas, but again, if you're a topwater junkie and that's what you like to see in the action with that, throw it. Just keep chunking it. Work those knee deep to thigh deep water levels on the edges and stuff. And again, we're going to start transitioning into warmer and warmer temperatures as we head toward the summer. So those water temps early in the morning will be just a tad bit cooler. But that's when your fish are going to be active and they're going to be up closer to your shorelines, especially if you got bait working up in those areas. So make sure that you remember that and take care of that as far as if you're going to throw your action your topwater action or your baits, your plastics up in those areas as well. So that'd be your target area and time frames during that. So again, majors and minors have been the main thing. Bait location, make sure your choices, especially we're fixing to get into transition days with the full moon that's coming here probably the next 14 to 16 days. So let's make sure that you take care of that and make sure you got different profile sizes to help you become and be productive during those times. East Pocket over in St. Charles Bay. We get back in here in this little area here, lots of shell that's back in there. So make sure that you got the right tide depending on what kind of boat that you're running, because that shell can do a little damage to your hull there if you're not careful, especially if you got a deep running boat. So if you got a shallow running boat and you got a decent amount of water in here, you should be fine. We've waded this little point all the way down into East Pocket, the whole little cove down in there, locating some nice fish, primarily trout, scattered redfish here or there. And then we've kind of worked our way down the shoreline there, come through the cut around Bird there, all the way, from right across from the St. Charles boat ramp, this whole shoreline, all the way up to Egg Point. So there's been different areas, different points in time. You got your grass beds that are in there that's been very good. A lot of bait working in there. So you give yourself opportunity to locate and find your fish. And we've had scattered redfish that have been over this, some decent trout that have been in here, nothing great. But, it's pretty consistent as far as what the fish are doing. They're showing up somewhere up and down that shoreline. You will locate and find your fish, especially if you get up around Egg, get on the shoreline there. So your good, strong southeast breeze, everything on that shoreline, this east shoreline here in St. Charles really sets up and is protected for you. So if you're looking for an area that you want to get out of the wind when you have those heavy wind days, this is a great area to get to, especially if you're fishing up here in the north area. So we'll use that. We'll get around Egg, fish that whole shoreline all the way down to Boy Scout camp, all the way up to, get on the other side to Big and Little Sharp, Indian Head, all that area there sets up really well with those good winds like that. But there's been a good amount of fish that we have found and located up in those areas. Again, the grass has been the key. Grass potholes, edges, fish are working out of those. We've located them deeper. We've located them up shallower. So if you got 2 or 3 guys with you, then just kind of spread yourselves out and work those shorelines like that, depending on where you want to be. Top water been okay. It's not been super great, but it's, if you're a junkie and you want to try to get that blow up, you're trying to get that action on the top water, throw it. Just stick with it. Again, the burner shads have been very good for us. The originals in down south have been good for us in multiple different flavors. Again, we're fixing to be in transition days headed toward a full moon. So again, you want to make sure that you have a different a variety of sizes for your baits, because you're going to have a little bit different kind of bite moving forward. It's just going to be a little weird. Again, what I said in the last video, the new moon phase for us wasn't quite as productive as it has been in the past couple of months, but we were still locate and find fish. It wasn't in big frames. Big bite frames weren't there, but it was all specifically around the majors and minors. So it's a super key point for you to make sure that you're paying attention to those time frames and when they take place. Big and Little Sharp have been pretty good up on that northwest side there, wading back down toward Cow Chip in that area. All that shoreline there has been pretty good, depending on what your wind is and how it sets up. But anyway, all those areas there have been pretty productive for the most part. You'll get your lull periods and time frames, so just make sure that you just be patient with it, because we're kind of getting into that phase where we're trying to get out of the cooler time frame as we get more and more warm weather. So our water temps are going to continue to go up. So those fish are going to be more and more active. So that time place. So you just need to be a little bit patient with them sometimes. Again, up here in St. Charles, alligators are out. So make sure you're aware of that if you're going to wade up in those areas. Just keep kind of head on a swivel. If you don't want to do that, stay in the boat and drift it. You'll be fine. Most boats nowadays have trolling motors on them, so you can do a lot of stuff with that as well. But just whatever your comfort level is, just be aware of that. And those areas up in here, that's kind of really only drawback to St. Charles when the alligators start to become active and are out in the water. But there are fish up in here. There's fish in lots of these different areas. Pick an area out, kind of align it with one of the majors and minors, and make sure that you're paying attention to the weather patterns up in there, and get your color choices and be patient with those areas and locate and find you some fish.